Hello and welcome to this Tuesday morning edition of the Manchester is Red podcast. My name is Steven Railston. I'm back as your host. Should be a quicker podcast today. I think it'll be quite snappy because there's not a huge amount to get through. But I'm joined by Tyrone Marshall, who's spent a few days at Peppa Pig World. He's come back nice and refreshed from his holiday. Tyrone, how are you?
Oh yeah, absolutely raring to go, mate. Such a relaxing couple of days at Peppa Pig World. Feet up, a few beers
Can't
by
beat
the
it.
pool. Really chilled out, mate. Really, really chilled out. Would recommend it if you just need to recharge the batteries.
It's not quite Portugal, is it? I think where you were
Not.
recently.
No. I would prefer Portugal. It's fair to say, but my little boy preferred Peppa Pig World on this occasion, and he had a lovely time, which is what it's all about, apparently. So yeah, he had a lovely time, and it was a nice family break. But I have come back more tired than when I went, unfortunately. That's not the plan for pre-season, so I'm told.
Well, you never know. Erik ten Hag's on holiday now, Tyrone, so perhaps you could have bumped into him at Peppa Pig World. I'm not quite sure where he is, where he's jetted off to after the FA Cup final, but 10 days on after that game at Wembley, we were both at that match down in London, and there's still been no decision communicated on the Dutchman. It's been a bit of a surprise that we all thought it would happen perhaps on the Sunday, maybe not after they won the game. We thought it would come in midweek. It didn't. Me and Samuel have kind of chewed over the fat quite a bit on two podcasts since then. But Tyrone, from your perspective, you've been away. It is very surprising, isn't it, that we've not had a decision communicated on Ten Hag yet.
Yeah, I can only presume he's on holiday somewhere where there's no phone signal, because it is getting slightly bizarre that 10 days on we still don't know. I mean, the word from United is that Ineos are conducting this end of season review. I mean, they're the only club still stuck on last season. Every other club is looking ahead to next season, and United is still reviewing last season. I've no idea why this review wasn't basically conducted before the cup final. Add in any little bits you want to, but 10 days is just remarkable, really. And there's a very fine line between looking to do a thorough process and conducting a thorough process and dithering, and they are over that line now. They are well into dithering territory. Whatever decision they had on Ten Hag before the cup final, they should still have, really. It was a great performance. It was a good plan. It worked really well. But, Jim Ratcliffe didn't make his billions by changing his mind on a decision over one little aspect or one game in a 52 game season. And if one game has changed everything, I mean, it shouldn't really give you much hope for the future, to be honest. And I don't understand what is going on now, to be honest. Like I say, every other club is looking forward and looking to next season, and United are still conducting a review into last season. It's not a great look, and I know they want to get things right. I know they want to conduct this thorough process. They want to get to the right decision, but it just feels a bit like they're wasting time now. I don't see what could possibly have taken 10 days, really. Beyond that, the only possibility is that they want to keep Ten Hag, but there are discussions over how they do it, because I don't think they can possibly keep him and not give him a new contract, because he's only got a year left on his contract. If they say you're staying but there's no new contract, I mean, essentially he's on trial again, isn't he? What's the point? That's all they're saying. It's a game by game deal, really, and he's been on trial since they came in. So if he's staying, there needs to be a new contract. So maybe the delay is that they are looking to get him to sign a new contract, looking to maybe reduce salary. Obviously, we suspect that the job title is going to change from manager to head coach. I'm not sure that's something Ten Hag will be overly enamoured by. So maybe it's moved on from end of season review into kind of how you keep Ten Hag and what keeps him happy. But yeah, I don't think this is now reflecting particularly well on Ineos and how they want to run United, because these decisions at an elite football club and at the top end of the sport need to be made quicker than they are being done. And it shouldn't be the case that 10 days on, we're still kind of stuck in this limbo where, to an extent, United have no manager at the moment, really. The current manager doesn't know if he's staying. Players who are considering their futures don't know who's in charge. Players who might sign for United don't know who's in charge. And like I say, every other club is looking forward and planning for next season. United are still looking at last season. So it feels like it needs to come to an end now, and there needs to be a decision, and they can move forward and start planning for what is going to be an incredibly busy and difficult summer.
I said on the last podcast, I didn't want to sound too dramatic, but that other clubs could steal a march on United, because it has only been 10 days. But when you hear Sir Dave Brailsford, who introduced marginal gains into cycling, and that's his whole concept, which he obviously dined out of. And he's kind of coming into United, and there's been questions whether that could work. But if you're talking about marginal gains, Ty, and it's 10 days on, surely that applies to this situation. You're not going to get marginal gains out of not communicating on the manager's future in that space of time. Look at Chelsea. They're an absolute basket case club. Todd Bowley. He's made Chelsea look like a laughingstock, hasn't he, since investment in Stamford Bridge? And yet they're looking kind of well run now in the grand scheme of things in the last 2 weeks or so. I mean, they've sacked Pochettino, parted ways quite swiftly, and then they've got the new manager in very quickly. So fair play to Chelsea. They've done what United should have done, communicated the decision. It's been a surprise, hasn't it? It really has, because, I mean, me and Samuel said that Sunday we kind of thought would be on call. That didn't happen. And yet we're sitting here and discussing this, and now doubts are coming in with Ineos, which you do give new ownership the benefit of the doubt, and they will be given time to get things right. They've made all the right noises since investing in the club. But this is the kind of first kind of niggly doubt, isn't it, since Sir Jim Ratcliffe's investment was signed off?
Yeah, it is. And it was always the biggest decision. You know, the other decisions they've made, I mean, a lot of this is low-hanging fruit. The stuff about tidy offices and working from home, it's the easy stuff. It's the low-hanging fruit. It's the lower end of the, you know, the profile scale, I guess, for employees at the club. Bringing in a new sporting director, chief executive, it's all fairly, it's easier stuff than deciding on the manager. And this is the most crucial decision. And you get the impression that they're dithering over it, that they don't really know what to do. And I mean, the comparison with Chelsea is an interesting one because, yes, they've made quick decisions. It feels like they've made the wrong decisions. You know, Pochettino had clearly improved as the season had gone on. All the players seemingly wanted him to stay. We saw the reactions from a lot of them on social media that suggested they didn't want Pochettino to go. They've appointed a manager who's had one season in the Championship. And, you know, of the teams that got promoted, I mean, McKenna did a better job than Maresca. There's absolutely no doubt about it. That Leicester team should have got promoted easily. They did get promoted easily, but they fell over the line in the second half of the season. You know, McKenna, the job McKenna's done over 2 years at Ipswich is phenomenal, really. Maresca achieved the minimum expectation, I think, at Leicester, which is promotion, and they nearly blew it. You know, I don't think what he did there you'd immediately look at and say he should be going to a job at Chelsea. I mean, he's got that job because
at least Chelsea
he's a Guardiola disciple.
Decisive, Ty. They've been swift.
Decisive.
Whether or not that decision is the right decision remains to be seen, and I guess it'll only be revealed with the fullness of time. But yes, they've been decisive. They've known what they've wanted, and they've communicated that. I think, look, even if United want Ten Hag to stay, communicate that pretty swiftly. Get over it and done with, because the uncertainty just helps nobody, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, it's better to be, in this instance, it's going to be better to be indecisive than right than decisive and wrong, I guess. If United end up with a better manager than Enzo Maresca next season and have a better season than Chelsea, then Ineos will say, we got things right. I agree with you. I don't see what could possibly have taken 10 days from the cup final to come to this decision. I don't see why it's taken so long, but Ineos will say this end of season review needs to be thorough. I'm sure it's looking at everything in terms of tactical setup, training loads, injuries. You know, there's a lot to look at there, but plenty of it could have been done before the end of the season as well. It's not like United had a packed end to the season. You know, they were out of Europe a long time ago. They've not had a busy schedule. They've only played 52 games all season, so this could have been, you know, it could have been a case of dotting the I's and crossing the T's really after the cup final, and it could have been done and dusted. So yeah, there is no reason for it to be dragging on now. And I think, you know, I mean, you're talking about this week. I mean, really, the next couple of days, make a decision, communicate a decision, and start planning for next season rather than looking back at last season.
Nothing was being prepared yesterday morning, Monday morning. You're going to make some inquiries today. It does feel like we'll have to have a decision tomorrow, which is Wednesday, or on Thursday, really, doesn't it? Or maybe they announce it when the England squad's announced as well and try to bury it. But I'm not sure you can quite bury the announcement on the Manchester United manager. I don't think that'll work. Moving on then, Ty, we'll get our teeth into some other bits. Luke Shaw was called up to the provisional England squad despite having not played since February when he came off against Luton with that muscle injury. It was interesting. Gareth Southgate said on May the 21st that he was a long shot and that he was basically doubtful to make the final squad. 2 weeks later, he says he's now got a very good chance. Shaw is an excellent player, fantastic when he's fit, and he is key for England, isn't he? Because he's only natural left back. But it has been interesting seeing his, I guess, his last few months, because he has been very frustrated. He hasn't been involved. He was on the pitch after Wembley. If he's fit, he has to start for England. But from a United fan's perspective, you're looking at that and you might be questioning it, because it has been quite a sudden turnaround.
Yeah, I think you'd be nervous about it. And he is the type of player that England would probably take a bit of a gamble on, really. I mean, we saw in the friendly last night, Trippier played left back, I think. Trippier started left back, and then Ezri Konsa went to left back, and then Joe Gomez came on at left back. I mean, none of these are really good options at left back. Luke Shaw is clearly the best English left back in the country, and by a distance as well, which is why you would be tempted to kind of take a gamble on him. And the way the narrative around him has changed from Southgate suggests that they think he's getting fitter, but I mean, he's not going to play in Friday's friendly, you wouldn't have thought. I mean, that seems almost impossible. So you're going into the tournament and he won't have played since, I think it was February the 18th at Luton he last played. He came off. Was it your birthday? There we go. Easy to remember. He came off against Villa the week before. He's had an injury hit season. He is the type of player that, even if he's fit for the start of the Euros, if England go all the way, he ain't going to play 7 games in a month, having not played for so long and not get another injury, I don't think. So he will need to be handled very carefully, and I think at United there will certainly be a nervousness if he is included in that squad, because a lot will be asked of him, and he is the type of player who suffers with injuries ever since that horrific leg break at PSV Eindhoven. He's kind of had these niggling problems that you get now and again. That's got to be the concern when you throw him into tournament football. You know, if he's back fit end of June, maybe that's still going to be 4 months without a game, to then go into the intensity of a tournament and maybe be required to play every 3 or 4 days at times. It's a bit of a risk. You can see why Southgate would kind of take that risk with him, and from an England point of view, why you would want him there. But, you know, speaking from a United point of view, I think there'd be concerns there. I think they'll be in contact with the England medical staff, making sure that this isn't a gamble too far if Shaw is included in that 26-man squad on Friday.
I mean, from England's perspective, it's a no-brainer, isn't it, really? You give him as much time as he needs, because he is your best left-back. Even from Shaw's perspective, it's understandable. He wants to be involved in a major tournament, especially when England have got such a great chance of winning it. Could you imagine if they do go on and lift the Euros and Shaw's not involved? You'd feel sick to the stomach when you're watching that from home. In terms of his United future and next season, Ty, it'll get into the stage now where he might need to be replaced this summer. Maybe not replaced, but have competition, proper competition signed. Tyrone Marshall has been out with a long-term knee injury. United need someone that can start every week in, week out. Luke Shaw's only started 70% of games, or been available for 70% of games in a season twice since his arrival, which in 10 years is just so poor, isn't it, his injury record? He obviously had that double leg break. That really wasn't his fault, and fair play to him for getting back to such a great level after that injury, because that was a really, really serious issue. But he's now the longest serving player at the club. Are we looking at getting a new left back in this summer? Because I think fans have been so frustrated with him this season. It's not been his fault, but his body has broken down again.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is that there's just so many other gaps in the squad that need filling, and they don't have the money to do it all. I mean, if we're thinking Wan-Bissaka's going to go, then there's a new right back going to be needed. I think Dallow's had a really good season and his first choice right back now, and he's now probably of a good enough standard that you don't need a new starting right back. But if Wan-Bissaka does go, you probably need someone else in that position. I mean, United do at least have 2 left backs. Okay, they're never fit this season, and Malacia is clearly a strange one who needs a big pre-season. But I still think it's going to be down the list of priorities. I mean, they desperately need another striker, another centre forward. They're going to need at least 1, if not 2, centre backs, and it all just costs money. If Casemiro goes, they probably need a holding midfielder. You can make a case for so many positions in that squad needing strengthening, and you're right, left back could be an area of concern, but there might also be a case that United look at it and think, well, if Shaw and Malacia stay fit enough of the time next season, you can get by with those 2. I mean, the season before, I think Shaw had a pretty good injury record, so he can do it, and he is, at his best, he is good enough to do it. So I don't see left back being right at the top of the priorities this summer. As we said before, a lot depends on sales really, and who is sold, and whether there's any unexpected sales that really boost that transfer kitty. But I think there'll probably be a case that United are looking at it and thinking, let's just hope Shaw is fit. Shaw and Malacia are fit next season, and we can get by for another year there and kind of kick the can down the road when it comes to a left back.
It just feels like that's asking for trouble to an extent when you think how long Shaw's been out for this season with different issues. Malacia hasn't played a game since June last year for the Netherlands in the UEFA Nations League. If you're going into the new season with left backs like that who have suffered really bad injury problems, it does to an extent feel you are tempting fate, I think. We'll move on to a few different bits then. Ty, an academy departure. Amari Forson looks set to leave, or he's expected to leave on a free transfer. I think it was all a bit of a shock really when he started against Fulham in February. Obviously Rasmus Højlund was ruled out the day before that game with an injury. Forson came into the side and he looked quite raw, didn't he? You don't really want to criticise a young player who is obviously 19 years old, but I think he was quite green and inexperienced. United have offered him new deals. I think the suggestion was in winter that he was going to sign a new contract, but talks of it snag and he's going to be let go. It looks like it anyways. But Ten Hag's really tried with Forson, it seemed, Tyrone, at least in the spring, in February as well, to get him to sign a new deal. He was clearly demonstrating there was a pathway to the first team. And look, you can't keep everyone, can you? You certainly can't.
No, you can't. You can't. And players are gonna see their futures elsewhere or think that path isn't there. And I think looking back in hindsight, maybe that Fulham start and that kind of run he had around the first team was Ten Hag and United saying, look, it is here for you. There are chances. Højlund's out. You're the man we're going to go to ahead of some more experienced and more expensive wingers. But he didn't do enough to maintain that first team involvement. And it's a shame to see him leave, especially considering United want to keep him. But like you say, you cannot keep everyone, and if he sees his development is better off elsewhere, then so be it. You look back at that Fulham game and what he's done this season, and I don't think anyone is looking at it thinking it's disastrous that he's going. He was probably a sellable asset. He might have played more next season, but I don't look at what he's done and think he was a nailed-on first teamer. Even if he'd stayed, you look at him and think he's probably someone they'd look to sell at 20 or 21. Everyone's development journey is different, but you look at someone like Garnacho now. Really, he's not on that level, and I just think it's not like they're losing a first teamer here. They're not losing a young player who's come into the first team, excelled, and now sees he's better off elsewhere. They're losing a very promising youngster, but not someone who looked first team ready. And the fact they're losing him on a free will be annoying. You never want these things to happen. It's never a good look at an academy that you have taken the time to develop this player, and they see their future elsewhere, and for whatever reason that may be, whether it's the pathway being blocked, which it'd be strange for any teenager at United at the moment to look at the pathway being blocked when they see Mainu getting chances. Campoala's had chances this year. Okay, that's a lot due to the injury crisis. Garnacho and Mainu are undroppables in this team at 19, and a lot of that is because Ten Hag gave them chances, and then when they played well, he played them. So if you're of a similar age and you back yourself, you'd have to think if it was solely down to that, United would be the right place for you. And for whatever reason, Amari Forson doesn't think that's the case. But given the talent United do have on the wings when everyone's fit and firing, I don't think it's disastrous that he's going to leave on a free. It's a shame for United, and it's not a great look. But it's not like they're losing someone who is going to be a first team regular next season.
Well, until recently, he was actually getting more chances than Ahmad. So he was getting opportunities. And I remember watching a clip of him sitting in Carrot in the reception after he made his debut. He was kind of saying he was so thankful to the Ten Hag, and he was just so delighted to make his first appearance. And I thought to myself, well, if that's true, just sign the contract then. Because this has been going on for quite a while. There's been protracted talks. And my suspicion has been the whole time, I think he just wants to move back down south, to be fair. He obviously joined United from Tottenham, and he's a London boy. So it would be no surprise to see him relocate back down there. Shola Shoretire is another one, Ty. He's coming to the end of his contract and could leave. So if you look at Forson, Shoretire, and then obviously Varane, Marshall, who we've already had there, exits confirmed, and then possibly Johnny Evans as well, who we're not quite sure what's going to happen with his contract situation yet. But already that's 5 players. I know I'm kind of including some academy youngsters there as well, but there is going to be significant departures from United this summer. It's going to exceed double digits, definitely.
Yeah, it is. It's not going to be as big as 2 years ago when there was a lot of senior players and a lot of experience. When I think you had Mata, Lingard, Matic, Pogba at that point. I feel like there was someone else big who I've forgotten now. Cavani went. So,
Matic.
Yeah, Matic. That was a big summer. This time, I mean, I guess Forson and Shoretire were very, very peripheral. I know Forson got chances ahead of Ahmad, but like I said, I think a lot of that was an attempt to keep him. Maybe a place opened up in the squad, and we've spoken before, for whatever reason Ahmad wasn't trusted early enough in this season, but I think a lot of playing Forson there and giving him those chances on the bench were, look, here is the pathway, sign that deal and you'll get more of this. And the fact that he's dropped out the picture probably hints at that. The big ones are Martial and Varane. I mean, Evans has been pretty solid. He's had a good year, certainly a year better than anyone expected, played a lot more than anyone expected. So much of this depends on that centre-back issue, because we've said before, and maybe Lindelof, only a year left on his contract, might be someone who's sold this year. Maguire, I think, has had a really good year. You'd be happy to keep him, but maybe it's pumped up his value as well. It'd be a good profit on the books for PSR rules. Maybe you give Johnny Evans a new deal just to make sure you've still got the numbers there, that you've got the 5 centre-halves. I mean, how invaluable has it been to have those 5 centre-halves this year when you look at all the injuries they've had? So there's probably a reason to keep Evans around. But the big ones in terms of departures that need replacing are clearly Varane. They clearly need at least one new centre-back. And Martial, I mean, a complete non-entity this year, Martial, but United have just got to sign another striker. They've got to sign someone to compete with Højlund, to take the pressure off Højlund, to be able to give Højlund a rest. That has got to be right at the top of the priority list this summer, that they get a new attacker and a new centre forward.
They need a new spine of the team, really, don't they? Which, as I said on the last podcast, we seem to see quite a bit: a striker, a midfielder, and a defender. Where do you actually stand on Johnny Evans' situation then, Ty? I asked Samuel the other week. We did a keep or sell podcast where we went through the players and decided who would keep or let go. I was actually in the camp of keeping Evans, purely because I think he's just done such a great job when he's been called upon. Until recently, he didn't have injury problems, did he? Actually did quite well to stay fit. I know he's kind of struggled with that in the spring again, but I think he can still offer some value if he's given a short-term deal, used off the bench or in cup competitions and maybe Europe as well, in the Europa League and the group stages. So would you lean towards giving Evans a new deal? And he's obviously very good around Carradine as well. He's a leader and has a role with the younger players.
Yeah, he's a good experienced centre-back, and I think as a 5th choice, he'd be pretty solid. I mean, I would not be against keeping him at all. He turns 37, I think, midway through next season. I think January is his birthday, so he is getting on now. But as a 5th choice, I think it'd be perfectly acceptable. Really, like we say, he's been very reliable when called on this year. Played way more than anyone expected, probably way more than even he expected, but was always reliable. He's experienced. He knows the club. There's a value to having people like that around the place. So yeah, I think for another 1-year contract, if he's happy with that and happy to be 5th choice, with the possibility that only brings 5 games maybe this year rather than the number he played next year, then yeah, I'm with you. I think it's almost a bit of a no-brainer in a summer when you don't really know who's going to leave until later in the window. I mean, at least it gives you that little bit of flexibility around centre-backs going into August in terms of outgoings and incomings. If you suddenly get an offer for Lindelof or Maguire that you weren't expecting, then having Evans around the place can kind of give you that flexibility maybe to accept one and boost the budget for elsewhere. So yeah, in this kind of window where so much is uncertain, it probably does feel like a bit of a no-brainer, especially given he's not going to be on particularly astronomical wages, really.
I think optics-wise, it probably doesn't look good from the outside, but for all the reasons we've just said, it actually ticks a lot of boxes, doesn't it? And it does just make sense. So it wouldn't be a surprise to see Evans give a new deal at all. We're only 25 minutes in, Ty, but we don't have a huge amount to speak about today. We will be back later in the week. You're like a black sheep now on the podcast. You're banned these days, aren't you, really? You don't appear on the Monday or Friday podcast. So it'd be nice to reunite with you later in the week, Ty. Yeah. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, why not? We can do it again.
Reluctantly. And thanks to listeners. Have a great week. We'll be back then, and we'll probably have a decision on Erik ten Hag to communicate and discuss. Speak then.